Hey everybody, it's the Mad Master here. I'm doing a video, and this is a very controversial subject yet again. But I figured I'd do this video because I find it very disturbing that there's not really been a really good analysis of this whole thing, and that is a more nuanced position that has talked about the whole Rand Paul questioning. I think it was Dr. Rachel Levin, the Health and Human Services Secretary. I can't. I'm not really paying much attention to the Biden administration since I was very been gaslit for the last 4 years by supporting Bernie and then questioning the questioning at the same time questioning some of the Russiagate and questioning some of the attacks on Trump, some of the types of attacks, and then voting for Bernie again and getting gaslit. So I just don't pay attention to a lot of the administration officials. But nevertheless, she is a transgender woman that is in charge of some type of cabinet position with regards to health. And Rand Paul questioned her about gender reassignment surgery for children. Now, I've done videos about this before, and I think there is a certain amount of silliness from the right wing as far as the subject goes. Like the irony, like the transgender bathroom debate was, we're going to have cops feel up a bunch of people, that might be legitimate females or males, going into a bathroom, especially like the more homely women, like Melinda Gates, for example, if she is really a woman. If I were a cop, I'd probably, if I were to have an enforce the, if there was a transgender bathroom ban, Melinda Gates would be the first one. I don't agree with the right wing saying Michelle Obama. By the way, I kind of gave props to her in my previous video. I don't think she looked trans, really. That's not my opinion. I know that Joan Rivers, before she died, said something. I just don't. Maybe she has a little bit of masculine stuff, but not really. But definitely Melinda Gates. Looks like Kevin Kline in drag. But anyways, making jokes about famous people looking not like their gender. That's not what this is about. So I have a very, what I perceive to be nuanced take. I think there are people that are, I wouldn't, I don't know, I don't like the word phobic because it connotates it plays into this narrative too much that I don't like necessarily, but hateful, phobic, whatever you want to use it, about transgender people. About now, and I know that Rand Paul's way of wording things to her, to the cabinet member, was kind of poised to sound a certain way for his audience, and that's my opinion. Now, that said, the reaction, the other side's reaction, was fucking ridiculous as well. More ridiculous, honestly, in some ways. Like what she was saying about just evading all his questions and stuff. Now, I understand that transgender people have had to go through a great deal of oppression and, questioning. I mean, I personally still am, to be honest, dealing with my own issues with that, because I admit, like, I don't feel like I need to be. And I had an ex-girlfriend, so she told me, she was giving me shit because I wasn't willing to swing by. I'm like, maybe everybody has a little bit of that in them. Of course, I believe that, but no, I'm just not interested in that. And she was almost like implying I was a bigot. It was like, what the fuck is wrong with you? So I'm not attracted to women that weren't born, I'm attracted to cis women, period. That's just a fact. And, I still find it unnerving when women have really male characteristics because if they're trans or whatever, stereotypical male characteristics. I just don't like it. It's not attractive to me as a man. That's just the way it goes. I mean, people might call that bigoted. I'm attracted mainly to cisgender women. That's just a fact. That's just the way it is. But I've had to deal with, like, I've made jokes about people of that, transgender people and stuff before, and that's occasionally happens still. Because that's kind of part of the culture of what I grew up with. Because it didn't really become a thing until like 10 years, 10 years ago that was even on the radar of most people. Since the late 80s, people have been, trying to accept homosexuality, and that's a different story because, in a way, and I'm not going to go into what's natural or what's not necessarily, but like, I think it's perceived as, even through history, homosexuality has been accepted as part of the vanguard of culture, for one thing. That's, a lot of these things. I mean, you have to go into some details about this sometime, but a lot of famous dandies, quote unquote, have been at the edge of culture. Because, for one, if you're gay, you have a lot more time because you're not dealing with this fucking traditional Western structure of family and all this shit. So you have all sorts of ways, all sorts of things you can do. And this has gone on for millennia. And this is kind of an acknowledged thing with a lot of people. So they do remain at the vanguard of things. I mean, Leonardo da Vinci was purportedly gay and stuff. It's kind of a thing that has happened. But back to the transgender things, there's a lot of stuff, we don't know. We don't know about it. Now, like I said, there's been a lot of discrimination. There's been a lot of bad things involved with that. Now, that said, if you question whether or not children have the ability to consent or the ability to make the choice for themselves to have gender reassignment surgery, then I don't feel like that's a bigoted position to come from. Because there's a lot of different things that could be going on that there needs to be time to make that decision. And yeah, it sounds kind of crazy, but I could see things influencing a child to, I'm not saying like some kind of transgender agenda, some kind of like Christian conspiracy thing, right-wing Christian conspiracy. I just mean social pressure, because they might be saying this about their own sexuality, about their own gender expression, and then they just might be confused, they might be experimenting, it might be some other mental disorder, or not, or some kind of some kind of thing that they're going through that they decide later. I mean, there's been people, just to, relate to homosexuality again, there's been people that didn't know that they thought there might be something weird with their sexuality, like, but they get married and then midlife they go gay, quote unquote. They're married to a woman, they had normal sex. I mean, they're probably more bi in a certain way or whatever, but just in the middle of their life, they know, that they've always been gay, or more gay. It's a spectrum, just like anything's a spectrum. But with our divided, polarized culture right now, people don't want to talk about spectrums. So, because of these things that could be influencing a child to go this way or that way, could hang out with a certain amount of type of friends. They could have other mental issue, emotional or mental issues that they're having, that they blame that on that, and then they go through this process and they regret it later. There has been cases of that, as Rand Paul brought up, even though some of his wording was a little bit weird. And I think Rand Paul has a communication problem. I don't think he communicates his ideas very well sometimes. Like I remember with Fauci, when he was talking about the T-cell immunity and stuff, he just doesn't, he's not able to like articulate himself well all the time, and he's always trying to play to his right, mainstream Republican audience. So he can't really. So I'm like, I'm watching the testimony, the questioning of this health secretary. And I'm just like, why don't you say this? Why don't you say it this way? Why don't you put it this way? It's like, And then he was being kind of offensive in the way that he was wording it a little bit, but like I said, he's playing to that audience, so he doesn't want to be nuanced about it. Dare we do that so our approval rating goes down or whatever. So I think there's a legitimate question about consent with children. I think, I think people need to talk about this and need to be open about it without, breathing down someone's neck about how they're a bigot or transphobic or whatever. It's like some of these same people are probably ones that will tell you that just like with the Evan Rachel Wood thing with Marilyn Manson, they're probably some of the same people that said, "Oh no, well she could consent, but the age difference made it so the power dynamics. So Marilyn Manson was raping her, even if she consented, it's still rape, or say like anything like they go into all these things like about consent or think any drunk sex is rape." Some of these same people are probably supporting the idea that a child can consent to getting, essentially their whole sexual assignment changed, and all these hormones and all these chemicals and all these fucking surgeries, which, carry some risk. So if what are they? It's like they're totally glossing over the fact that a child does not have the reasoning capacity of an adult. But also, it's like, where do we draw the line here? So, I mean, like I said, with consent, who can consent to this or what they want to do, all these things. And that's a really tricky proposition there. I remember when the Young Turks, Anna and Cenk Uygur, Anna Kasparian, both proclaimed that they thought the age of sexual consent should be 16. This was like 3 or 4 years ago, so I don't know what they would say now, but it was, it was an interesting prospect because they were talking about how, different things happened, and there's all sorts of different laws. If you're 16, the other person's 16, they can't arrest you for statutory rape. You have to be a creepy old man hitting on mid to late 20-somethings to be a creeper like me, I mean, I admit, I'll hit on women that are, at the bar that look younger. That's what I'm into, not super young, because that gets a little weird, because, it gets a little weird, being honest, but I do like younger women. I'm just, it's part of evolution, I believe, you're attracted to more fertile, whatever, but that's problematic too, I guess, so enough about that. I'm not defending my tastes in women or anything like that, but yeah, it's usually like mid to late 20s, but it's like where do we draw the line with this consent thing? It's like, I mean, why not just, like, if we're going to go that route, it's a slippery slope. I mean, it might be a fallacy in some ways, but if a child has that much sway and, I used to be for the emancipation of children as far as like being able to do what they want. Like when I was a little kid, I was like really into that for some reason, because I think partly because I saw adults were often more immature than I was at that age. I saw adults around me just acting like complete fucking buffoons. So I believed that children should have more rights. But we got to talk about this, and we got to, there's legitimate questions that need to be brought up. And Rand Paul just worded it really weirdly, and he talked about genital mutilation. It's like, well, that's a very different thing in those cultures than what they're talking about. But still, it's the issue of consent. If a child can consent to getting gender reassignment surgery, that's a real question, because what else can they not consent to, but you're allowing this? Or what else are they going to consent to in the future? Like, on the contrary, what else we gonna, it's like that. I know it sounds like a slippery slope where, accepting one thing will lead to something more odious, like the right wing likes to bring up. But, these are legitimate questions in this situation, because we're opening up a whole can of worms with these ideas. And, we got to talk about this. It's like, it's one thing to say someone's transphobic because they don't want, they want a cop at the bathroom trying to keep people's genitals at the door, Not that that's really ever going to happen, but like some of those laws that they proposed in the South were so ridiculous. Like there's a lot of trans women that could fucking pass really well. And then there's women, like I said, there's homely looking women that look masculine, but they are natural women. It's 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 absolutely ridiculous to try to legislate some kind of thing like that. Like, gender neutral bathrooms, maybe. I don't know. I mean, if they really want to level the playing field, gender neutral bathrooms are probably the way to go on, fortunately or unfortunately for our society, whatever you want to go. Maybe it'll increase incidents of rape because there will be a lot of men that are predators going in these bathrooms. Not trans men or trans women necessarily. That's what I'm saying. Like actual men, just regular men that are perverts that want to fucking rape or molest whoever. I mean, gender neutral bathrooms, maybe, or just have. I mean, that's the whole thing with the trans bathroom thing. That I just thought it was kind of it's just impossibly labyrinth-like in its application and ideas, and kind of authoritarian, very authoritarian in a certain way. So I was always opposed to these laws, and these people were fear mongering essentially. I think the last person, if someone has all these fucking hormones going through their body and like having all these fucking surgeries on their fucking crotch, I doubt the first thing. I mean, just saying, doubt the first thing they want to do is go molest someone. I mean, it's kind of stupid to assume. It's like my brother. He thought all gay men were child molesters, and he thought all lesbians were raped. I mean, for a while he believed that, and it's just like, it's nonsense. But these are legitimate issues to bring up. Consent. What can you consent to? Should a child be given that decision? What age cutoff is there? I mean, I'd say puberty would be the time, like mid-puberty, as far as if it's ideally going to happen with regards to that stuff. I'd say early puberty. I know I've met people and I've heard from people that they knew they were the other gender when they were like 6 and stuff. I've heard about that happening, and it does happen, but I don't know if I don't think our society should have 6-year-olds be able to give them the choice to take hormones and mutilate their body like that. I just don't think it doesn't set a good precedent, just my opinion. After puberty or to an adult, then have at it, but I mean, even with puberty, that's problematic too in some ways, but it's better, than, like puberty blockers. I mean, just like some of these things are just on a medical level, it just sounds really, there could be really bad results. And I don't know much about how these surgeries go, but it just sounds really fucked up. And needs to be called in question. There's nothing wrong with questioning it. There's nothing wrong with questioning anything, especially if the response from the other party is just denial and just evading the question. That just proves the person that's questioning may have a point or may have some salient ideas to bring up. And I have no doubt that the Republican Party is full of transphobic people, quote unquote. And I know that they think it's horrible and all that. I'm not going to deny that. But let's not, throw the baby out with the bathwater. I think we got to talk about whether or not kids should be able to consent to this. And, if that's right, well, you're problematic, you're an edgelord, you're a fucking white male. Oh my God, you're so transphobic. Then so be it. That I'm, a right-wing edgelord now because I happen to question, the ethics of having a little kid being able to consent to something. Oh, that sounds a little, whoa, talk about problematic, I mean, talk about problem fucking matic, where we're actually questioning that, that's why people say it's going to lead to something else, as far as that goes. But, and I'm not one of those, Liberty University people that say, well, homosexuality is going to lead to like pedophilia becoming normalized. It's not like that. But when we're talking about like being able to consent to medical, you know, invasive medical procedures as a child, even as a teenager, to some extent. I mean, I'll tell you a little story. So I would say as a teenager, I was completely off the rails, like mental illness, completely out there. I didn't know which side was up. So if I was given the choice like that, I probably would have made some bad choice. I mean, or any kind of life-bearing decisions like that as a kid, as a teenager. I probably would have fucked something up so bad I would regret it for the rest of my life. Thankfully, I wasn't given any choices like that. Any kind of like grand scale sweeping kind of decisions. I don't mean necessarily gender reincitement or anything like that. Hell, I'm kind of glad I was a virgin until I was an adult, because I would have been fucking like obsessed with the first girl I had sex with and like probably kill myself or something at certain parts of my adolescence, because I was just completely fucking out of it mentally and otherwise. I mean, it's just I was a complete buffoon. I'm not trying to bash myself like as a kid. I just mean like emotionally very unstable. I didn't really show it because I didn't talk for a long time. So I was kind of a mute in high school. But inside there was a storm brewing, So yeah, I'm kind of glad that a lot of adult things didn't happen to me until I was an adult. So I mean, I could totally see both sides of this issue, because like I said, should teenagers be able to consent to things? Like, should they be able to smoke pot? Should they be able to have sex? Should they be able to get gender reassignment surgery? Well, the libertarian in me would say yes, but at the same time, looking at my own life and how, maybe if I would have gotten like more different type of therapy or something, I would have been better with all these things. But, it's just the way I was as a kid. It was pretty out there. So these are just some things to think about. It's sad that this discourse has is so black and white without any shades of gray or any color or anything, that if you question the idea of children consenting to gender reassignment surgery, you're transphobic. That's fucking ridiculous. But at the same time, some of Rand Paul's things were kind of bizarre, the way he worded it and just the way he talked about it. It was just like, you're kind of pushing this thing, but it's just like, that's where where I'm at. It's like the middle ground. I mean, it's fucking, they talk about the polarized society. It's like, well, seems like that's what's going on with some of this stuff. But yeah, I don't think I think we need to look at the long term with all this stuff and question narratives and question ideas when they can be questioned. I mean, we're just getting down this weird path, and where someone's essentially not really canceled, but accosted and attacked for having legitimate questions nowadays. That's a fucking sad state of affairs. I never hated Rand Paul. I mean, I think he's too much of a mainstream Republican in a lot of ways, but I mean, like I told people in 2016 that I think I told people actually in 2011 too that if, certain candidates became elected, like I was like, well, Rand Paul, if Rand Paul ran against Hillary, I might have to vote for Rand Paul. I mean, if I was going to vote for the lesser of two evils or even vote anymore, I'm just saying, like, I may not even vote again. But back then, I told people if I would have voted, Rand Paul might be my choice over Hillary even. I mean, there's a lot of odious things that, that I don't agree with him on, this kind of things. And he is kind of more Christian, he's towards the Christian conservative side. But, with a lot of his libertarian ideas and a lot of his, not wanting to go with governmental authority, he stood up for, certain people's rights, like farmers and stuff in the past too. I forgot what that issue was, like something to do with, just the various things that he's kind of aligned himself with, even like the Canadian drug importation stuff that Big Pharma was against. You know, there were certain things Rand Paul has been about that I probably would have voted for him over Hillary, honestly. So I'm not like a hater of Rand Paul, but I think we need to look at these things. You know, we need to go in depth. We need to be able to have a conversation without attacking the other or evading people's fucking questions. That's all.